I was asked by casting directors to tone the limp down or lose the limp, or had representatives, agents and managers comment on it in a negative way. And while that was happening, I started my freshman year at Lamar High School in Arlington, and then I started getting bullied because of my limp and my other disabilities. So that combined with people in the industry commenting on it negatively was disastrous at 14 years old. I felt like that I was given this gift and this passion for acting, but then I felt like I was given a curse in my limp that would prevent me from ever reaching my potential as an actor or ever being able to make a career out of it. And it was a dark time. I went through depression and suicidal tendencies as a kid.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Tiffany.
And welcome to In the Middle. Today we have one of my favorite people with us as a guest, Jordan Ross. You might know Jordan as an actor as Little James on The Chosen. He is an actor, screenwriter. He's a host who is currently, as I said, a series regular on the hit TV series The Chosen. He has also a reoccurring role in Taylor Sheridan's hit TV show 1883, which is the prequel to Yellowstone. One thing that sets Jordan apart from most of other actors is that he happens to have cerebral palsy and scoliosis, as well as a number of other ailments. By the age of 7, he had already undergone half a dozen major surgeries, including a full spinal fusion, and had several near-death experiences. He discovered his love for acting at age 6, and I'm going to stop there because I want to talk directly to you about the rest. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is so exciting. I know. Let's talk about let's just go to the very beginning of your life and being born with the ailments that I was reading about. Yeah. So what was that like for you?
So I was born 2 months premature, and which resulted in cerebral palsy and scoliosis. And then when I was about 4, I was diagnosed with severe asthma. So from that age until like my late teens, I was probably hospitalized about 4 times a year, and then had another half dozen hospital ER visits as well. So it was basically my second home. It was all I knew. Kids are super resilient, so I'm fortunate that if I was gonna experience a lot of medical issues, that I started at a young age, because I feel like as an adult, if you live a healthy childhood and then you start, it's probably a lot harder to adjust to. So yeah, it really helped me to have a positive outlook and to focus on what's in my control and what isn't, and taught me a lot of patience and empathy, and I'm super grateful for all of it. You
got some ProStar visits. I saw some pictures.
Yeah,
that's a neat treatment that you get.
Exactly. Yeah,
you're gonna be there.
Yeah. It was really cool. Like the Cowboys would come visit us in the hospital, and especially I was in the hospital a lot in the 90s, and that's when the Cowboys dynasty was happening. So all of those guys came, and I didn't know who they were. I just saw these giant guys there in their jerseys. But now, as a huge Cowboy fan, it's really cool to look back at all of those pictures. I have an autographed football from Tom Landry, which is crazy. So yeah, it was special. It was one of those things that like the Shriners would come visit a lot and like give out balloon animals and treats to the kids. So I actually enjoy. There's something nostalgic about being in the hospital for me. Whenever I visit like a family member or anything like that, it's like it really is like going to my childhood home or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is crazy, because most, in a good way, because most people don't they fear the hospital, and you made the most of it, which I know is your story in general. You said that at age 6, you wanted to be an actor. So tell us, I want to get into that with you. How did that happen?
So I was really shy, I think mostly because I was in and out of the hospital. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to socialize with other kids. And my mom, was the only person I would talk to, as well as like my sister and a few other family members. And one day we were at an open audition for a community theater production of A Christmas Carol at Main Street Theater in Mansfield. And everyone was in the audience that was auditioning, and I was sitting out there, and we were just with friends of our family that were auditioning, and we were planning on going to eat after. And my mom went to the bathroom and came out, and I was on stage singing Silent Night, and I was 6 years old. I would not talk to anyone else outside of our family. But for whatever reason, I don't remember how I got on the stage or why, or if someone asked me or if I just did it on my own. But I ended up on the stage, and I loved it. I loved the community, the camaraderie, the feeling of just like showing up and playing every day with grown-ups that were doing the same thing, and and other kids my age. It was just such a cool community to be a part of. And from then on, I was like, this is all I want to do. So luckily, I had a super supportive mom who was there and believed in me when I said, hey, I'm putting all my eggs in this acting basket. And she did everything she could to support that. So, yeah.
I love that.
Well, with having cerebral palsy and scoliosis, you had physical ailments and a limp and things like that. So obviously we're going to get to your character right now, but what was that like? Because I know you're a mom with kids, and it's a bullying world we live in, even to adults. So what was that like as a kid? Because I know you're a bully activist now, against bullying, obviously. Yeah. Let's clarify that.
Anti-bullying.
Anti-bullying, keyword.
Yeah.
But I want us to talk about that as a mom and raising kids in this generation. If they've gotten bullied, how they could bully, and then just your experience. Like, it's crazy right now.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like in theater growing up, before my teens, I always felt a sense of belonging. I never felt alienated. I knew I walked different from the other kids, but I felt so loved and accepted and just embraced. I was, playing roles like Tiny Tim, who had a crutch, and it worked for that role. But then I was playing like at Casa Manana in Fort Worth, I played Huckleberry Finn, who isn't a character with a disability, but it didn't matter. I was just cast in the role. So I never felt like it was something that was holding me back or preventing me from doing what I loved, until I got into film and television more. And I started going to LA at 13. Again, my mom was so supportive. She had me go out there for a summer for like an acting boot camp. And then I kept going back. And from like age 13 to 18, I essentially was out there at least half of that time. And most of the time on my own, just living with other families whose kids were acting, or acting teachers, or whoever, I could stay with. And it was something that that's when I was exposed to this whole other school of thought, which was that my limp was a liability, that I was asked by casting directors to tone the limp down or lose the limp, or had representatives, agents and managers comment on it in a negative way. And while that was happening, I started my freshman year at Lamar High School in Arlington. And it was my first public school I had gone to. I didn't know anyone, and at that age, naturally, you're already kind of becoming really self-aware and picking apart things about you that you don't like or that you feel self-conscious about. So I was doing that, and then I started getting bullied because of my limp and my other disabilities. So that, combined with people in the industry commenting on it negatively, was disastrous at 14 years old. I felt like that I was given this gift and this passion for acting, but then I felt like I was given a curse in my limp that would prevent me from ever reaching my potential as an actor or ever being able to make a career out of it. And it was a dark time. I went through depression and suicidal tendencies as a kid, and that my mom, I had the most supportive mom and family members and community within the theaters that I worked at, but I still had this it just totally destroyed my self-esteem. And since then, I've learned that 1 in 4 kids by the time they graduate high school have had suicidal thoughts, and it's something that I'm really, really passionate about now. I talk about it every chance I get. So again, like the medical issues, I'm so grateful I went through all of it. And I'm fortunate that I'm, one of the kids that came out on the other side and was able to you know, to get through that, because a lot of kids unfortunately can't. They don't have the support, or even when they do have the support, it's such an isolating feeling to feel like you're not accepted by your peers. And I think the thing that got me through was, one, my love for acting. I knew no matter what, even if I was 80 and hadn't booked a single role, I was still going to be pursuing it. I just loved it that much, so that pushed me. And then two, it was my peers that kind of stood up and finally embraced me. Just certain ones, even one or two people, you know, speaking up against the bullies. And that was the thing that really, I think, got me through that phase of my life, and is what I always try to encourage kids to, and my own kids, to stand up for others.
I was gonna say, as a mom, like, it breaks my heart. You know, your kids, you send them out into the world and you want to believe that everyone's going to handle them with the care and the love that you would, and that's just not the case. And then now you've got social media, and people have access to other people in ways, and you can hide behind screens. But I always tell my kids, you never know what someone's going through. We've come out of a season of grief and just some personal loss, and I'm like, no one would know that physically looking at you, but you're carrying pain and hurt. And I said, in the same way, other people are too. So I'm always encouraging my kids to look out for those that are being bullied or just mistreated, or maybe just need someone to, like, come up and invite them to sit with them. Like, I think when we really put in perspective that we're all made in the image of God, and that's not going to look the same, but we all matter. And I think that is something you've got to instill at an early age, because it is so disheartening to see just in society. It's adults too. Like, we're just so calloused, I think, to just the humanity of people. We're so quick to get out of camera and to get a good laugh or to go viral that we miss out on, these are people who someone loves, someone does life with. And it's heartbreaking.
It is. And I think another important thing as well is to, not that we ever have to justify the behavior of the bullies, but my mom always taught me that, you know, hurt people. And I always had empathy for them. I felt bad for them, even when they were really hurting me and I was kind of spiraling. I understood that they wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for hurt that they were experiencing too. So that's something as well that, like, I have as I've gotten older, I have so much, I just view all of these kids as kids that need love, and they ultimately, deep down, that's all they're really wanting. They're bullying because they want to be accepted and loved by their peers. And I just think it's scary as a parent, but I think that what you're doing is exactly, you know, what you should do as a parent, encouraging your kids in that way. So good for you.
Well, that's what, because when you were talking about your peers stepping up, maybe it didn't always start with a parent, but I think parents helping kids, because it's a taught behavior. I think a kid could also maybe get bullied, let's say, by their parents. They have abusive parents, and choose to be kind. I don't think it's always the parent teaching, but I think probably 99% is the parent teaching those kids when you go out to do that. So I just, when you were saying that, I was like, those powerful parents behind those kids that set them up, and then that affected you. And
because it's a scary feeling, like feeling like you're stepping in and opening yourself up to being bullied too. But it really does make such a, I just saw, minor spoiler alert about Inside Out 2. I don't know if y'all have seen it yet. It's
no, I can't
really,
wait.
really cute. But I saw it last night with my kids, and there's a moment where someone's being bullied, and then another, like, one kid steps up and says something, and then another one does. And I leaned over to my daughter and I was like, see, as soon as one person steps up, other people are more likely to. And that's something that, like, you know, I've really tried to instill in my kids as well.
Being that first person even.
So
sometimes people are going to follow you. We don't.
It's like a snowball effect.
Well, and either way, it's like, if you bully, then someone's probably going to follow the bully. And if someone, you know. Okay, so kids. So down the way, Jordan got married and had kids.
We've been, this year is our 10-year wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then we have 3 kids. I have 2 girls and a boy. And the girls are almost 9 and almost 6, and our boy just turned 4. So we are getting no sleep still, but it's all worth it. But yeah, that's another thing that I think, as someone with disabilities, it's like you see in the way that people with disabilities are portrayed in pop culture, it's usually in a negative light. It's usually people that, like a character that needs saving, or a victim in some way, which, the disabled community can be victimized a lot, but there's so much more than that. And I think as a kid, it was something like when I thought of like romantic relationships and getting married and all of that, I always wanted to, but I also in a way felt like I wouldn't find the person for me because I wasn't what I viewed as, what any girl would be interested in. I wasn't taller. I wasn't like the football guys. I walked different and stuff like that. And that was a thing that like, I'm so looking back, I would tell young Jordan that like, you're going to find your person, you're going to have your family. None of that's going to affect any of that part of you. And if there was anyone that didn't want to date me because of my limp, then it's like, that's not someone I would want to be with anyway. So
let's stop right there.
Yeah.
To the viewer, I'm speaking this to myself. Whoever God has for you is going to love you just the way you are. And if they don't, then goodbye.
Yeah.
They're not for you.
Exactly.
Friends, even family. I don't know. We don't cut off family, but people that
Sometimes
okay, that's another episode, and you'll be coming back.
Yeah.
No, but that's so important. I don't know about you. I know for me, there's ways I've always been taller and different things that growing up that have even stuck with me and what ifs and stuff. But so just let's deposit that right now as you're listening.
Yeah.
God loves you. He made you correctly, and he's going to use it all for good to find your person. That's for the singles. Okay.
Yes.
So now, let's just jump to The Chosen because there's something particular I want to talk about for all of us. But let's go into The Chosen and how did that come about?
Yeah, that was.
You're talking about a dream come true that's made. I'm speaking for you.
No, yeah.
But it was made for you, and just how beautiful for all of our lives that God has that specific thing.
Well, thank you. It is one of those things. I always had like this dream and these big aspirations of being an actor and these big ideas of like what I wanted my career to look like. But it was so hard. I would break down. Like I was working in Dallas at KD Conservatory, this acting school that I graduated from. And I would break down on my way home or to work because I was just like, I feel stuck. I want to act. I'm helping these kids. I'm teaching some. Like it was fulfilling on a level, but it wasn't what I envisioned for myself. But I needed to pay the bills. We had kids at home, and like I wasn't qualified to do anything else other than that because I put all my eggs in that basket.
And real quick on that, I think that's super important too for us that aren't actors, because we've talked about this with you looking for jobs right now and things like there's times and seasons for all of us that we don't feel like what's next and do I fit with what's next and the unsureness of how that's all going to play together. I think that's so important in this place.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that it was a great lesson because as much as I wanted these things, I couldn't envision how I couldn't see a path to get to what I wanted. And so I was like, I'm doing what I can do. I'm taking acting classes. I'm like reaching out to people. I don't know what else I can do. Like there's so much that's out of your control. And it was really discouraging. And then I was hardly getting any auditions. I had undergone a major hip surgery a few years prior. It was just like I was in a place where it felt like stagnant. And then I got an audition notice for The Chosen, which at the time was just this low budget, historical drama that I didn't think it would amount to much, just based on one, the track record of a lot of like faith-based projects and of my own career. I didn't think like I had never been lucky enough to get cast in a role that would be like substantial and would be a more than just like a one-off that I would get to keep coming back to the same role. And I went into the audition. I did the callback, I got the part, and I thought best case scenario, I would do these scenes. I worked 4 days in the first 4 episodes. And I was like, I'll have new footage for my demo reel, and then that's great. So it was a confidence booster. And then we came back for the next 4, and I had a little bit of a meteor role in the next 4 episodes. And then it just kept growing. And it's still one of those things I'm constantly pinching myself. And then eventually they took my disability, because I was playing one of the apostles, and they didn't really notice that I had a limp initially. And then once I'm on set, the director came up and asked, why I had a limp, not in a bad way. He was just curious. And I explained my condition to him, but I was terrified because I thought like, great, now they're going to recast me, because that had happened before. So I was like, there goes that role. And then they made it part of the storyline because in their mind, they're like, well, we have an apostle that has a noticeable disability. And now he's watching people get healed, and he's having to sit there with that. These people that don't even know Jesus, he's been with Jesus from the beginning. So what would that mean? What would that look like? How would he respond? And we were able to take that and tell a really beautiful story, I feel like, regarding little James, that has really resonated with the disabled community, specifically within the church, because the relationship between faith and healing is so complicated.
Well, I know so many people. My grandma's one of them. She died of cancer, and on her deathbed, she was like, God's going to heal me, and we're going to tell all the nations about it. And she passed away.
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes into death, but there's people alive that are praying healing, and they're living in this. So your representation of that as a human, as well as on the screen, I mean, this covers so many people. Mm-hmm. So I know as that scene was created, I want to talk with you about that, and I want us to go deeper into what was that like for you to, I know Jonathan's not really Jesus, but to have this moment.
Well, one, he definitely, Jonathan makes our jobs so much easier because I describe it as like him turning on his Jesus eyes. As soon as he does, you're just like, you can't help but get wrapped up in the moment. And he's such a great scene partner. He knows what you need and how to be there for you in those scenes, because like for that scene in particular, it was my biggest scene on the show thus far, my first one-on-one scene with Jesus. And he was, he comes up before each take, and we would just hug. They'd say action and let us start whenever we're ready. And he would just hug me for like 30 seconds, and we'd just stand there together. I'd wipe my tears away because I'm not supposed to be crying when the scene starts. And then we'd start the scene, and it was...
And the tears because you know where it's going?
I know where it's going, and it was just thinking of little James and what his experience was, and thinking of my own past, and like it was just such an overwhelming day. Like I felt when I left, I was so emotionally exhausted and physically exhausted. I almost felt like I was sick. Like I felt like I had a cold because it took everything out of me in the best way. Right. And I slept so well that night because I was just so tired. But it was, I knew it would be an impactful scene, and it was for me just shooting it. But I didn't realize the true impact it would have. And also the opportunity it's given me to really talk about healing and faith and how difficult that relationship is. And, I started hearing from kids that have disabilities and parents of kids that have disabilities, or people that have like lost their child or lost a loved one, and talk about how that scene resonated with them because they felt seen. They felt like they've been in little James's shoes of asking like, why have you not healed me yet? Like I see you healing all these other people. And it could even apply to relationships. It can apply to jobs. It can apply to literally anything. It's such a universal struggle we all have. And there is that. And then there was the side of, the school of thought that like, God's going to heal all of us. You just have to pray enough, or you have to have enough faith. Which I totally understand where people are coming from that have that mindset, but it's demonstrably, false whenever you look at the suffering in the world. You look at people that like your grandma that aren't physically healed. That my grandpa, it was the same thing. He had essentially Lou Gehrig's disease, and slowly over the course of 15 or 20 years, his body just shut down, and he was never once lost his smile. The last 2 years of his life, exclusively just got food from a feeding tube, and could barely speak because his muscles were so weak. And but he was still the same positive, happy, optimistic person then that he was when he was fully able-bodied. And I remember thinking like, if you're going to heal anyone, it would be him. He's the most Jesus-like person I've ever known. But then it's one of those things that it's like Jesus tells little James in the scene, think of the story you have to tell. Think of how much you can inspire people if I don't heal you. If you use this to inspire other people, if you use this to show other people that they have a place, regardless of their physical limitations or capabilities. And it's created a great conversation where, I've had people without asking come up and just start putting hands on my legs and back and praying for my spine to straighten out, my legs to grow. And I appreciate the sentiment, but it's like, I'm now at a place where I don't think I need physical healing. I used to want it, but it was the only reason I wanted it is because how other people made me feel about it. But, having a little bit of pain physically here or there, having, my hip hurt whenever the weather changes because of all the metal in my body, is worth it when I consider what the lessons that it's all taught me and the type of patience it's given me. I wouldn't be the actor I am without it. I wouldn't be the father or husband I am without it. And I'm just so grateful for all that it's taught me that I wouldn't trade it for anything. So I'm really grateful that other people within the disabled community are able to receive that as well and to see the beauty within themselves, that they're beautiful not in spite of their disabilities, but because of them.
I would have never thought that being single at 40, but had I gotten married, I don't know if I would have earlier, I would have come into the person that I am today.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that with everything?
Like going what Jordan said, there's purpose. I feel like when you can find purpose in your pain, and it doesn't mean that you have to be glad that something happened. I'm not glad that my husband died, but I can see how the Lord has turned that pain into a purpose. And I feel like that in of itself is healing and gives you that, resilience and that desire then to go and give that to someone else. And so you can find this resolve in your pain and in your suffering. Also too, like he was saying, when you can say, okay, God didn't choose to heal, whatever disability, or God didn't choose to bring me out of a certain situation, maybe even in the time frame that I wanted to. Like, okay, I've accepted the fact that this has happened, but now, it's been prolonged by, God's timing versus mine. But when we can just step back and surrender and say, Lord, for whatever reason you have me here, I trust you, and I trust that in this process, you're going to do good things and good things are going to come out of it. That can just give you this sense of peace and ability to let go and let God,
And I'm going to brag real quick on Tiffany because
please do.
She raises her kids with this mindset. Like some of us, you were lucky to have this mindset as a kid, but I think some of us, it takes us to be an adult to get this mindset. And for you as well, having that as a kid, she teaches her children this mindset of God has the best, not just ahead now.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful because it takes a lot of people, it takes me a long time to get to the place that I wish I would have gotten to a long time ago.
Yeah, I've talked to my wife a lot about that, like how there's times like my grandpa, before he passed away, there were so many, I was as close to him as I am to anyone. And I never, like before he'd be in the hospital, there would be times we thought maybe this was it. And then he'd somehow fight through it and then come back home. And we were like, oh, great, like we have him a little longer. And I never cried during any of that. And it wasn't, I'm not someone that like pushes my emotions down or like locks them away. And my wife was always asking like, are you okay? Like, are you worried about Big Daddy? And I was like, no, like I'll cross that bridge when we get there. Like when he's gone, then I'll deal with that. But like right now, it's not that I'm like, oh, I can't go there yet. I was just like, we're not there yet. Right. So I'm just going to be present, and we have him here. And when we don't, then I'll deal with it then. And it was something that like I try to, with acting, it's the same thing. Like if you obsess too much over a role that you missed out on, or, in any career really, if you obsess over the promotion you didn't get, just being like, okay, cool, I didn't get that one. I'm just going to stay focused, keep looking ahead and move forward. And it's something that like, when it comes to healing, physical healing in particular, none of us are promised physical healing. At any point, anyone that's not disabled could become disabled. Right. And in fact, the only thing that is guaranteed is that at some point we won't be healed, like physically, because we all die. And it's something that, in a weird way, has kind of given me peace and this mindset of like, I'm going to control what I can control. And I'm not a very anxious person because of that. I think because of, you'd think having near-death experiences I could see how it could cause you to have more anxiety because you've been close to that. But for me, at least, it kind of, made it to where it's like, I've gotten through that before. I can get through whatever I'm going through now. And if I don't get through it, then I don't get through it. And it's like, I think it's it just helps you to be present and to focus on what is within our control.
I agree. One thing my therapist told me in the early days of grief was don't forecast grief. Because I would go down the road of like, well, we're never, like I was thinking about things years down the road that she's like, but you don't know. And like what you were saying when you were younger, you didn't know that you were going to get married and have kids and have this whole life. And sometimes we can get in this position where we're forecasting grief. We're putting ourselves through unnecessary grief and angst and anxiety and all the things when whatever we're forecasting may not even be the case. So that's something I've had to remind myself, even in this process, of some of the things that I'm afraid of happening or dreading happening may not even happen. It may not even be a road that the Lord's asking me to go down. But like you said, it just comes to a place of surrender. Lord, I trust you. This is where you have me right now. Right now, this is where I'm at. I'm going to walk with you in this, and I'm going to believe that the next step and the next phase of my life, you're going to be there too. We'll walk through that. But just taking it day by day. And I agree. I think when you've gone through something traumatic or near death, it can make you more anxious if you allow it, but I think you realize how little control you have. Like I used to think that I had way more control than I really do, and so now I'm like, okay, God, like the worst that can happen is death. That has happened. We have gone through it. Not been fun, but you've been here. So if for some horrible reason it happens again, like I trust and believe you would walk me through that, whatever that looks like. So it does take the power, I feel like, that.
Oh yeah, it really can control you. My wife, her therapist said something similar, which was like, she was worrying about a bunch of things. Like she like just has a lot of anxiety. So it's something where we balance each other out. And she talks about this openly too, so she'll be fine with this. But yeah, she was talking to her therapist about it. And she was basically like, okay, and if that happens, then what? And she was like, well, I don't know. And her mind is going to all these places. And she's like, okay, and then what? And she just kept telling her, or like having her take these extra steps and be like, basically come to the point of, well, I'd wake up the next day and I'm still here and I've got the kids and I've got Jordan, like where it helped her put everything into perspective instead of her mind just kind of like running with it and creating all these other, branches of like, well, what if this happens and what if this happens? So yeah, it's really just like being present and focusing on what we can do about a situation and then leaving the rest to God, I think.
My counselor said the same thing. I love that. The conclusion was, what if the same, like different things I'd gone through in the past with dating, let's say, what if that happened again with a new guy or whatever? Well, what the Lord did through brokenness for me as a girl that went through some interesting and hurtful breakups, He used so mightily. And I know that's what we're talking about here, and with my counselor, it was like, but God is still there. When she would say that, then what? Those promises don't change. She'd say, then what? Are the promises still true? Yes, but then what? What if it happens? Like whatever, God specific. So as we close, we could talk forever about this. What when you have a day that like maybe triggers the past? Because you're so optimistic, and I've been around you a few times now, and you just glow the presence of the Lord, and you're so encouraging. But you're human, so I would assume there's one day or where the pain's more than another. What do you do in those moments? What can you speak to the viewer about in their limp, in their middle, that helps you? Yeah,
it's interesting. Now, like there are things that trigger. Like one thing is when I walk past, or not anytime, but often if I walk past a reflective surface and see myself walking, sometimes I'm brought back to that 14-year-old kid that's like, that's bad, that's embarrassing, walk straighter. And I think that for a moment, or if I see myself on screen, there's moments of that. But I think a huge thing for me was, as a father, it helped because I see the love my kids have for me. They wouldn't want me to be 6 feet tall and fully able-bodied because that's not their dad. I'm their dad. They love the way I walk. They love me as I am. So kind of trying to view myself through their eyes helped me see the beauty in myself. And then even if you don't have kids, you have people in your life that do love you and that accept you and embrace you. So focus on that. Try to see yourself the way they see you. And when I do that, when I think of my kids, when I think of my wife, my family, my friends, my castmates on The Chosen, and how much love they all have for me, it makes it silences those other voices that like the bullies in high school had like planted in my brain 20 years ago now almost. No, it was, whoa, that was 20 years ago. Not almost. But yeah, it helps silence those voices a little bit. And yeah, they're always there. It's almost like being, you know, an addict or something. It's something that's always going to be a part of you. Those insecurities will always be a part of me. It'll always be something that will pop up from time to time. But it's just about surrounding yourself with the cure is just surrounding yourself with the people who aren't going to do that, who are going to plant like the positive things in your mind and show you the beauty in yourself. So yeah, just surround yourself, find your people.
Yeah. Well, and you're big on that with everything you've gone through and praising your community that stepped in. And I think finding the community before you need the community is such a big thing too. But I think there's so many people, and especially with COVID, it made it worse with isolation. And so you're saying that and you have it, but there's a lot of people that feel like they don't.
Yeah.
However, you had to go to those people. I mean, I'm sure they came to you at times, but you had to put yourself in the acting and put yourself in different scenarios, as did you too. We all could have just become hermits in our homes. So I think that's super encouraging. And I hope as the viewer that you're listening to that you might feel so alone. You have the power to connect yourself into communities. Churches are everywhere. There's a bunch of nonprofit groups everywhere. And it might be risky. It might feel uncomfortable. And pray about it and let the Lord give you that strength to get in that, because we are all testaments of the power of community and then also being the community for other people. So I just thank you for your story. And one of our favorite things, again, is how can we live best in the middle? And your story is so beautiful, as is everyone's, but of how God purposed you for this moment. It makes me think of Esther for such a time as this. And this is probably just the icing on the cake for everything else that's ahead that God has, right? He's not done with the chosen. That's not his grand plan. There's got to be so much more we know. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank y'all for having me.
How can people connect with you?
You can find me on all the social media platforms at The Jordan Ross. You can also listen to my podcast at What's Your Limp on all platforms, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Or you can go to jordanwalkerross.com for any updates. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'd love to hear from you. Again, you can follow us at @themiddle.tv on the social media platforms. Please comment, tell us how we can be praying for you and what's your middle and how are you getting through so someone else might see it and be encouraged. So, and just remember, there's laughter,
hope,
and belonging in the middle. See you next time.